welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Is it time to curb social media? Is the big debate and conversation on everywhere this evening and for the last couple of days after a US-based journal printed a story saying that Facebook in India is being partisan to one political party. It has sparked a massive debate with opposition members now pointing fingers as well and saying that Facebook is being partial to the ruling BJP. In fact, the Delhi Assembly's Peace and Harmony Committee has decided to summon Facebook. On the other hand, you have a top Facebook official who says she has been receiving death threats after this story has come out. Quite a sordid situation, but the key question behind all of it remains that is it time to look at the impact that social media has on our public discourse, and how do we do that without muzzling free speech? That's the first big story we're debating on the show. Of course, we have a lot lined up for you as always, but let me begin by going across to my colleague Chandra Shrikant just to capture the story so far. Chandra, take us through all the developments since that Wall Street Journal piece came out on Facebook.
The latest controversy to hit Facebook comes after a report in the Wall Street Journal detailed how Facebook's India policy head opposed attempts to apply hate speech rules to individuals belonging to the Bharatiya Janata Party, despite their posts being flagged as those that violate the platform's policies with respect to hate speech, promoting violence, and one was even flagged as dangerous. They've named Raja Singh, a BJP MLA in particular, who's been pretty vocal about what he thinks about Rohingya Muslims and other issues. Now, this of course has become a political hot potato with Rahul Gandhi saying that it's now apparent that Facebook and WhatsApp are controlled by the BJP and RSS. But the controversy does not end there, because the Union IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad hit back stating that this is the same party, the Congress party, that was in touch with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook to weaponize Indian data. So how can they accuse the BJP? So clearly Facebook finds itself in the unenviable position where it's being targeted both by the ruling party as well as the opposition party. On the one hand, you have Shashi Tharoor seeking to summon them for their platform rules. On the other hand, BJP MP Tejasvi Surya wants to summon them because he believes that pro-India posts are getting censored by Facebook. So we have to wait and see what's going to be next, who will be summoned in this issue. Meanwhile, Facebook itself has issued a statement saying that they abide by all rules and that they do not have political affiliations or political opinions in any country that they operate in, that they are trying to be as fair and accurate as possible. Interestingly, Ankhi Das, who's in the eye of the storm, she's the public policy head of Facebook, she has filed a police complaint stating that.
All right, thanks for that, Chandra. Let's focus on what we're discussing this evening. Now, this is not new or unique for Facebook. In number of countries around the world, in the US, in Europe, in Singapore, Facebook has been questioned by policymakers, by local governments, by politicians about who they let stay on the site and who they remove. Facebook by themselves have very clearly detailed policies on what defines hate speech as per them and how they deal with it. Before we get to the discussion, just another interesting nugget. In the second quarter of this year, Facebook has reported that they have removed over 2 crore posts from around the world. More than 22 million posts have been removed from around the world, which is 10 times the number of posts they removed about 2 years ago. Why is it not working? How do they do it? And to what extent can you blame social media? To speak on this and more, I'm joined today by Apar Gupta, Supreme Court lawyer and co-founder of the Internet Freedom Foundation. Akriti Gaur, independent policy advisor and tech lawyer, joins us on the show, as does Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist. I will also be joined in a short while from now by Raghav Chaddha. He is Aam Aadmi Party MLA and chairman of the committee of the Delhi Assembly, which has said it will summon Facebook officials for the role of the social media giant in the Delhi riots. Let's begin quickly with how we see this situation standing up. Apar Gupta, is this just a lot of noise after that one article? And do you see this really going down any specific path? Because Indian rules and laws and policy makers have time and again seen ways and means to muzzle social media, but it hasn't really gone anywhere.
The first thing is that is there a basis of concern, actual concern to all of this? This is the usual kind of political clanking which we see between the BJP and the Congress. I think because the allegations are twofold and they concern and they name specific officials at Facebook India with regard to its content review on specific. Secondly, we are to election integrity rules. And on both, there is some merit in conducting an investigation. One also needs to consider that there's a pre-existing investigation by the CBI into the Cambridge Analytica case, which has not made fair amounts of headway. And this comes to a second part of question, Tamanna. Can we see any outcome resulting from this, or are laws too weak, or are systems too frail to actually rein in social media companies, to impose penalties? I wouldn't like to make that broad comment, but just looking back at the past, yes, we have not done enough. We have not enforced existing laws. So it's not only an issue about the regulation not being there, it's also about a lack of will. And this is happening in Facebook's largest market globally. I would really urge parliamentarians, the Standing Committee on IT, to at least summon Facebook global policy teams. And we, at the very least, need an international human rights audit, because Facebook has conducted one similar audit and has released a report for civil rights compliance in the United States just on July 8th. And I think we deserve this in India as well.
Akriti Gaur, what the concern is that the whole conversation about the role of giants like Facebook, and it isn't just Facebook, there are other platforms as well, gets devolved to depending which political party is feeling insulted or hurt at that point. We had a similar situation with another, short messaging platform where one side felt that their members were not getting verified and not getting blue ticks, and the other side thought that they were losing followers, etc. It just becomes so partisan that the issue sometimes is lost. And is that the same concern here? Because there's finger pointing now from both sides.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you in the sense that I think just circuiting back to developments in the US a couple of weeks ago, and that would give context on, which ruling party tends to blame which platforms when. And this was the antitrust hearings which were conducted. And at that point, all big platform players were in that conference, were in that hearing. And, there were so many allegations that they're favoring, X platform is favoring the Republican Party, etc. Without, of course, detailed investigations haven't been done yet. So I do agree with you that sort of platforms and the real question about their transparency and accountability often comes up in this context. But at the same time, I think there is merit in really understanding why these platforms get caught up in these controversies. It's, either they are not transparent enough, they are not accountable enough. So when we as users or we as people who study them or regulate them don't know how they function internally, of course, they'll get wrapped up in the controversy of the day.
Madhavan, I think it's time to ask the question of how much impact does social media have on our public discourse, and can we really at this point try and put the horse back in the stable? I sometimes wonder what is the point of these questions, or of questioning social media platforms, because I don't really see a situation where you go back to where information is not disseminated on these platforms, or where you're muzzling or having some kind of scrutiny on the pipeline of information that is put out.
Tamanna, one important point I've been observing in you're using the word muzzling, and I would not use the word muzzling for social media because social media, the default state is anarchy because anyone with a smartphone can say anything. And that is problem number one, because self regulation, which has been the hallmark of traditional mainstream media, is now out. So we have to go shift from a paradigm of the so called muzzling to a paradigm of meaningful regulation. So it's not about what you can print, it's about what you cannot print or cannot say. So that is where the hate speech issue, the core of it lies. In this, the important point to remember is that one person's hate speech can be another person's free speech. And the rise of the right wing everywhere across the planet, whether it's Turkey or Brazil or India, is basically this whole business of the narrative has resulted in the breakdown of what used to be the old fashioned democratic media consensus. And therefore, we are looking at a new normal in which hate speech is passed off as free speech. Here, the important thing is the media has to go beyond the technical legal brief because you have to regulate, and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has to realize that with great power comes great responsibility.
Wait, who is going to regulate? Madhavan, the question is who is going to regulate? It is going to be the same. It is going to be the same elected representatives who are extremely thin-skinned to any kind of criticism of themselves, and some will say the worst perpetrators of hate speech when it so suits them.
No, I completely not only agree with you, but I'm glad you raised that question, Tamanna, because the important point to remember is that, as they say in Hindi, "Hamam mein sab nange hain." If you have politicians trying to play kabaddi with each other using Facebook as a prop, there is one kind of a problem of political rivalry. If you have business entities, let's face it, Facebook was starting out as a business entity that listed on NASDAQ, and Zuckerberg became a big billionaire. But he wasn't prepared for this game of media regulation. So some of the old rules of the judiciary and the media have to be brought into play through proper institutional conduct. And a JPC is not a bad idea for that reason, because it's a parliamentary forum as opposed to, and therefore by definition is bipartisan. It will include members from all parties. And in some kind of a judicial review is required, according to me. We are living in troubled times. Even the judiciary has become controversial. But we have to take an institutional approach to this as opposed to a political or business approach. And the controversy currently on is based on Facebook's behavior as a business entity. So there are political entities, there are business entities. What we need to regulate are institutional entities and how we get there. And a JPC might be a good beginning, but very clearly we need a new level of thinking in which we have to go beyond the brief of law, which is where I'm not happy with things being merely legal. You have to understand.
Yes, I don't know about you what JPCs have really achieved in the past. Apart very quickly, you stand and you bat for freedom on the internet. Do you really see a situation as being the best case scenario if you have social media conduct being regulated by lawmakers? Who will regulate them?
So social media conduct to a large degree does need to be regulated. I've always said that. In fact, the Internet Freedom Foundation, where I work as the executive director today, has addressed a letter to all the members of the standing committee for IT. We've demanded summons to be issued not to Facebook India but to Facebook Global, which includes their leading teams. The second is a very clear demand for an international, global, headed human rights audit of Facebook India, because these partisan demands which are emerging both from the BJP and Congress do need to be investigated. We do need closure on this. And Facebook Global has done it in the United States. We in India deserve something similar, right? The third and the last element is with respect to the lawmaking and what needs to happen there. Now, it's important to consider here that social media regulation, which is at present existing, consists of one, criminal laws, and the second is immunity for whatever is posted by an end user. It does not shield the platform when it willingly makes choices which promote hate speech, and it can be a larger larger investigation which can be opened into it. But for that, our investigatory agencies, which includes the CBI, which is right now conducting an investigation on Cambridge Analytica, it actually needs to proceed. So if our institutions itself don't function and don't work, the social media company itself is not interested in coming forward with transparency. Us as end users have little of no hope of remedy.
Akriti, do end users first have to be informed properly about what they're consuming? I think we just seem to narrow this down to a few instances of violence and who says what, but the misinformation on social media is much wider than that and much more harmful. Do you think enough has been done on behalf of these media giants, social media giants, to ensure that verified news or verified information is reaching end users?
So I think the short answer would be no. I feel a lot of things can still be done, and these can be done at various levels at which we consume information. So it's right at the point where someone publishes or shares a snippet of information on a messaging platform or a social media website. At that point, I should be able to know if this is verified, if this was by a news agency, or if this is personal opinion. The second stage at which I think there needs to be a lot of awareness and attention is, through not just these platforms, but organizations around it, which keep users aware of certain false content. So we have independent fact-checking organizations, some of which have been employed by social media platforms that are doing the job. But what happens is that the potential for harm, the moment someone reads a fake news or incendiary message, is so high and the response time is so less that it's very difficult for a fact-checking organization to immediately sort of inform you. So that's still, so checking news in real time is still we're struggling with, but I wouldn't sort of preclude the possibility of
yes.
And sorry, the third thing I want to also flag is when
sure.
these platforms
I want to go across now. That's a good point, Akriti, but I'm just going to go across now to Raghav Chadha. He's, of course, MLA of the Aam Aadmi Party and chairman of the Delhi Assembly's Peace and Harmony Committee that has said it will issue summons to Facebook officials in India. Raghav, thank you for joining us on the show. Can you start by telling us why you now want to issue summons to Facebook officials in light of one article in the Wall Street Journal?
So the Committee on Peace and Harmony is a committee set up by the Delhi Legislative Assembly subsequent to the unfortunate and the ghastly Delhi riot. And the objective, one of the objectives of the committee was to maintain peace and harmony, restore and promote brotherhood, pacification, and peace and harmony. Along with that, this committee also has has under its domain and its purview to take action against fake news, against communal and hate speeches, hate mongering, so on and so forth. And subsequent to this article that was published in the Wall Street Journal, several complaints were filed by citizens of Delhi before this committee. And those complaints do allege that the officials at Facebook were hand in glove with hate mongers. The allegations are very serious in nature. The allegations also press upon the fact that there was deliberate and intentional inaction on part of Facebook when it came to curbing hate speech, taking action, initiating action against those who are hate mongers. And as a result of which, this committee today has taken serious cognizance of the complaints that one has received. Summons and notices will be issued to officials of Facebook and others. Evidence will be led before this committee, and the committee will come out with its findings.
Raghav, I must ask you, you were talking about some very serious allegations. On the one hand is, you would say perhaps there is negligence, that hate speech was allowed to propagate, Facebook's internal mechanism didn't sweep out hate speech, etc. But you're saying officials were hand in glove in serious violence. On the other hand, people are asking whether this is going to lead to muzzling of, contradictory sort of opinion on social media. How do you ensure that that doesn't take place? And do you think there is real basis to some of these allegations that Facebook would be complicit in spreading of violence?
First of all, I, in the capacity of the chairman of the Committee on Peace and Harmony, would refrain from commenting on the merits. I am merely mentioning the allegations that do find mention in the complaints that this committee has received. In my duty as the chairperson of the committee, I will be unbiased and very objective towards every evidence that is led before me, led before the committee, and I would certainly refrain from making any allegation from my side. But yes, the complaints that I have received do highlight that certain officials of Facebook, perhaps Facebook India, were willfully, turning a blind eye, and perhaps were even hand in glove with certain serial hate mongers, and complaints to that effect have been received, which pertain to the unfortunate Delhi riots. And therefore, the locus of this committee has arisen. A cause of action is there before the committee, and appropriate action, of course, will be taken by the committee in days to come.
Okay, I must reiterate my question which I asked earlier, Mr. Chadda. You are a politician, you are well versed in social media. In fact, you are a new generation politician which banks on social media to reach your voters. Do you think that there is a thin line that we must be sure we don't cross where free speech is not muzzled? And do you really think politicians can be the best people to ensure that all opinion is there on social media platforms, and hate speech muzzling does not turn into strangulating free speech?
First of all, Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, which talks about freedom of speech, which gives us the constitutional right to freedom, fundamental right to freedom of speech, is something that constitutes the basic structure of our constitution. I think no action on part of any legislature or on the part of any executive, and not even on the part of any judicial pronouncement, can have any sort of adverse impact on Article 19. I think that is a golden principle that is enshrined in our constitution. Now, speaking of the fact that I'm a politician, yes, I'm a politician. I'm an elected representative. I'm a lawmaker in the Delhi Legislative Assembly. And the Constitution has very carefully demarcated the roles of the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. I am merely functioning in my capacity as a small part of the legislature in Delhi. And as far as your question regarding the the curbing of free speech, etc., is concerned, Facebook has a very detailed rules and regulations, very comprehensive regulations when it comes to taking action against those who are hate mongers and spreading communal content to create communal disharmony. And those regulations have been implemented in several parts of the world quite effectively, and even in India, I would say, to a certain extent. Now, whether those regulations were pressed and brought into effect in certain cases when it came to office bearers of a political party, namely the BJP, whether there was willful inaction, whether the Facebook was complacent or complicit in dealing with such matters, is something that will be a subject matter of this committee. The Wall Street Journal article, in fact, goes to name certain officials and explains, to us how all this used to work as far as Facebook India is concerned. So I think all this will be part of the proceedings of the committee. Evidence will be led. People will be cross-examined.
All right. Thank you so much, Raghav Chadda, for speaking with us. He's the chairman of the Peace and Harmony Committee of the Delhi Assembly. This is a story that will have to be followed carefully and closely. We'll see if it leads to any clarity on how to maintain that balance between allowing social media platforms to become a vehicle to spread hate and violence, and to ensure that free speech is not strangulated either. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the first discussion this evening.